All right. I just want to say good morning. The May 4th, 2023 virtual meeting of the Anne Arundel County Council is now in session. Today, we will be hearing from a small handful of departments regarding the proposed FY24 budget. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
I go in order of district. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Ms. Pickard.
Present.
Mr. Volkey.
Present.
Ms. Hummer.
Present.
Ms. Fiedler.
Present.
Ms. Rodvian.
Present.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Present.
And Ms. Bolair.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have all 7 council members and our county auditor in attendance.
Thank you. So as a reminder, we are on Arundel TV. Is this being recorded as well?
Recording in progress.
It is now.
All right, thank you. So muting yourself when not speaking is imperative. So be sure to say your name before you speak every time for the folks at home. So at this point, just any of the council members have any questions before we begin? All right, I don't see any hands or video that have been activated. So we'll begin today's presentation with the community college. All presenters, please remember to introduce yourself. And today we have President Lindsay, Don Lindsay, who is an amazing president of the college. And I will turn it over to you, Dr. Lindsay.
Good morning. Good to see everybody. Can you see me okay? It's saying my video stopped for some reason. Can you at least hear me?
We can see and hear you.
Perfect. All right. Well, I just want to say, I'll start with my warm welcome. We look forward to these conversations every year. We know that the council has some tough work ahead, so we are here to present our comments to the operating budget and our capital budget. But first, I want to introduce our board of representatives that are here today. Our chair, Sandra Moore, our vice chair, Larry Uvala, Trustee Chen, and Trustee Curran, who happens to be our student trustee, who's doing an amazing job. And then we have the vice presidents, Vice President Beardmore for the vice president for learning resources management, our vice president for instruction, Dr. Tanya Milner, and our student support person for VP, Dr. Felicia Patterson. So I can't see the screen. So if somebody could move the PowerPoint. Okay.
She's on it.
That's it. Thank you very much. And we could just move over one more. I'll just hit the highlights real fast. And again. Perfect. Okay. So just a couple comments before Melissa and her team start the presentation. I do want to share some examples of the wonderful work that the college has been doing and evidenced by outside accreditors. We go through an accreditation site visit every 8 years as a community college for the Middle Atlantic States reaccreditation process. And I'm pleased to share that we did host the accreditation team. We got no recommendations, which in my 30-year career of being involved in education, I have never heard of a college getting no recommendations from a site team visit. So I just really want to stress the pride and the accomplishments of our faculty and our staff and the dedication to our students. And I think it does continue to highlight our reputation as being a national leader. We can go ahead and move to the next one. And I'm not going to read the accomplishments to you. You can read them, but I'll just touch on a few. We are a gold level military friendly school. We just met with Colonel Sapp yesterday to talk about continuing our partnerships with the garrison. Our nursing program continues to be award winning, continually ranked #1 in the nation for a variety of our programs. And I'll just mention our computer information systems this morning. Our health and life sciences building, which the county graciously assisted us with funding for, has earned many awards. Most recently, we received an international award called the Green Good Design Award. We were also recognized as Partner of the Year by the County School Foundation, and we continue to be the #1 college in Maryland. I have scheduled appointments to meet with each of you so we can take a deeper dive into any of the conversation that we have today. Melissa and I will be available to answer any questions that we may have or you may have as you go through this budget. I think the college is well positioned, well situated. I think we have something to be incredibly proud of. And at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa for her presentation on the operating and capital budget for Anne Arundel Community College. And with that, I can go mute.
Good morning, Melissa Beardmore, Vice President for Learning Resources Management at Anne Arundel Community College. On the next slide, provide, in addition to the accomplishments that the president shared that show the value of the investments in AACC, we are providing one more piece of context for our budget here, how the current year is looking financially. We are projecting a slight uptick in enrollment this year. Great news, approximately 2% as of today over our budgeted enrollment, or what we will refer to as FTE or full-time equivalent. Spring enrollment was healthy, primarily due to increased dual enrollment students. That's related to the opportunities afforded through the blueprint legislation. We actually saw about a 48% increase spring to spring in those dually enrolled students. Despite the inflationary cost increases we are all experiencing, position vacancies have more than offset those additional costs, and we are, good news, maintaining a balanced budget. The college's estimated fund balance is within our board's policy of 5 to 10% of total revenues in that college, in our fund balance. And as the president mentioned, we're fresh off our accreditation visit, and the fund balance is something that our accreditors consider in their evaluation of our fiscal viability. And as we will talk about later, is a source of funding in our capital budget. So with that context, we will review our operating and capital budgets for fiscal 24. On slide 6, in our budget submission to the county executive, we requested a $5 million increase in operating funding. The county executive's budget provided a $1 million increase. And as you will see in subsequent slides, our entire budgeted increase is to provide much needed compensation increases for our employees. On the next slide, you will see that how we balanced our budget for that $4 million reduction. We have what I'll call some good adjustments that we felt we could make to our revenue estimates based on new information from when we originally built our budget months ago. For example, we have additional interest that we expect on our cash balances, generating an additional $500,000. It's one of the good aspects of increased interest rates. We have updated, as I mentioned, our enrollment projections for the spring, which indicates that we can increase our enrollment projections for next fiscal year, which generates an additional $492,000. We have also increased.
Melissa, can I pause you right there real quick?
Of course.
What is your fund balance?
Great question. So it's an estimate because it is kind of a moving picture, if you will. But our estimated fund balance is about $12 million, and that's within that 5 to
10%. Yep.
10%. That's 7%.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Great question. We do submit our estimated fund balance as part of our full budget submission to the county executive, but because numbers, as you well know, Mr. Chair, estimates and projections change, so that 12.4 is as good a number as we can calculate today.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, so we've increased our transfer from fund balance, as you see on this slide. The piece that we are struggling with is the $1.7 million in expenditure reductions that we made as a result of the overall 4 million reductions. And similar to revenues, there are some reductions, expenditure reductions that we feel we can manage, but not all of them. So on the next slide is really the ask or the headline for this presentation. We are asking the county council to restore 1 million in funding to the college. We are hopeful that as you review the adjustments through this hearing process, through your talented auditor and her team's recommendations, that you will have an opportunity to reallocate or restore 1 million in operating funding to the college. We are not asking for funding for new positions in our budget. We use a reallocation method of existing funds and vacancies to fund the bare necessities, increasing in costs and any critical new positions. We are asking for the $1 million in assistance so we don't have to cut further. It's a model that unfortunately we've experienced for many, many years due to limited increases in public funding. And as you will see when we review the college's expenditures further down in the presentation, all new money is going to compensation, an area where in total the college's pay package has not kept parity with other county departments or component units. So lastly, before we jump into the numbers on the next slide, just sharing some anticipated challenges or opportunities, depending on how you look at it, that will continue beyond fiscal 24 as we strive to serve our students and our county and our community. As I shared, competitive compensation is our #1 priority in this budget, and it's because of our talented faculty and staff that we are so successful, as the president shared in her comments. We continue to lose faculty and staff due to compensation. We have top candidates that are not accepting offers that we make. Is there a question? Okay. And we are losing.
I think someone, 1 second. I think someone has a hot mic. Thank you.
Okay. So we are seeing extended position vacancies, extension of searches, and unfortunately increased workload for the remaining faculty and staff as we work to address this challenge. And it's truly critical, it's a board priority, that we are able to attract and retain quality faculty and staff. They are the backbone of how we deliver on our mission. We are unsure of what the future labor market will hold, but we do know we need to do something significant now in this budget, or we may not be able to dig ourselves out of it in the future. We continue to partner with Anne Arundel County Public Schools and Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation on the implementation of Blueprint for Maryland's Future. This landmark legislation certainly has broad implications, and as I mentioned, in the first full semester since the announcement of tuition and free community college, we have seen a 40% increase in participation in that program. And as you can imagine, a high school student has different needs than a traditional age student, and we are likely going to need to increase our support to ensure those students are successful and have a positive first experience with the college. We continue to reallocate existing funds and vacant positions in support of critical programs for our county, specifically in the healthcare fields and skilled trades. And again, this budget does not request new funds in support of those programs. We have reallocated from within to fund those very important programs. On the next slide is a document that hopefully looks familiar. It is from your budget book that summarizes the college's entire operating budget. We'll walk through the details of the overall $8 million increase and the sources of revenue in the next slide. So, highlights, these are the highlights of our fiscal 24 budget. As I stated previously, we requested a $5 million increase and received a $1 million increase in the county executive's budget. We have a $3 million increase from the state. And these two funding sources provide funding for our compensation plan. We are also implementing an overall $4 and tuition fee rate increase. And as I mentioned previously, projecting increased enrollment to round out our revenue picture. More detail on slide 13. The college has what we call a three-legged stool for our operating.
Can I pause you right there? I got one other
Of course.
question. On that last slide, the $4 rating, what's the projected revenue generated from that increase?
Well, we have both a $4 increase and a small increase in our projected enrollment. So overall, that's bringing the $2.1 million to the budget. And there's some other little tweaks that we make in there as we analyze. It's kind of a complex estimate that we do for tuition and fees. But generally, and someone on my team will correct me, but generally for each dollar of tuition increase that we make, it's about $200,000 240,000. Someone already corrected me.
Okay,
Did that answer your question?
it did. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right. So, this slide, again, our three-legged stool, we have the county, the state, and then college revenue sources. So there are 4 lines here for the three-legged stool: tuition and fees plus other college sources totals the college's contribution to the budget. The total college sources of revenue, so that tuition and fees plus other sources, generates an increase of $4 million in fiscal 24. We're getting that additional 2.9 million from the state and the $1 million increase from the county. And again, we're hoping you support increasing this number to 2 million. So next, I'd like to focus on the expenditures. This summary is a recap of the allocation of new funds within the budget. Again, as you see in that second line, that $8.1 million, the majority of the increase is coming from compensation, and I'll walk through each component in the next slides. In terms of reductions, we don't just roll over a budget from year to year. We look at institutional level costs to determine where we might have savings. The biggest area this year is in, not unexpectedly, projected unemployment costs. We also have some small reductions that we have rolled into our 24 budget, as you can see from this slide. Base adjustments are the category we use for increased costs associated with existing services. The bulk of these adjustments relate to projected increases for utilities as, unfortunately, rates climb. And then there are some other kind of miscellaneous adjustments that are incorporated reductions, fortunately, in this budget. The next slide shows a further breakdown of that $8.1 million in that we categorize as compensation related. The second and third lines there are really the impact of, we have a 10% increase in our compensation pool, and I'll talk about that in a subsequent slide, that we are proposing for fiscal 24. Other items are compensation and benefits related based on assumptions in our budget that total that $8 million. I think important is that negative 731,000, we do budget for turnover. So turnover is savings related to positions when they are vacant. And we are increasing that turnover budget in this proposed budget by $731,000. On the next slide, just by way of review for previous council members, but new information for new members, in the spirit of what we call shared governance, we supported our faculty and staff in a review of our compensation system several years ago. And as a result, we implemented a new system with the goals of transparency, ease of implementation, consistency, and really important equity, all guided by our compensation policy. These systems are more fiscally and administratively sustainable than the previous system. For staff, we use software that sets a grade for each position, and the system grabs market data for the region. And probably more detail than appropriate for this presentation today, but the result, we can happily in one-on-ones provide a deeper dive on that system for you. But the result is that we do have a compensation system, as I mentioned, that is more fiscally responsible, easier to understand. We moved away from that traditional grade and step system with COLAs and merit to what is a market-based system based on mid, and max ranges. Again, that's for staff. Staff increases are based on the midpoint of a grade versus the actual salary. So staff on the lower end of a scale end up with, percentage-wise, a larger increase. That's the part that can be contributes to the fiscal sustainability. Folks that are past the midpoint have a smaller percentage increase overall. The key is that we have adequate funding for that program, which means enough to keep pace with the increasing labor market. Historically, that's been about 2 to 3%. But if salary increases don't increase more than that labor market percentage each year, then employees will not be able to move through the salary range within that system. So the next slide, and I'm sure this is information that the administration looked at as well. In building our comp budget for 24, we did review some key data points listed on this slide. We have compensation committees where our faculty and staff review this type of data and provide recommendations for comp increases. And sifting through all that information, working with our board and our budget committee, this budget does include, as I mentioned, a 10% compensation pool for our faculty and staff that is distributed in accordance with how those systems were set up. Again, in order to fund this market-based comp system, salary increases have to increase more than the labor market, or else employees don't move through the salary ranges. They're basically treading water. As we shared previously, we are struggling to fill vacancies. While we do budget turnover, our positions are taking multiple searches to fill, if we are able to fill them.
And how many vacancies do you have?
I'm sorry.
How many vacancies do you have?
Oh my goodness. Many. We actually track that by division. So each of the VPs has a turnover budget that we have to meet. So it changes. I do know in learning, we have, oh my gosh, there's probably 40, 50. I'm sure someone will chat that into me, the exact number, but in each division, we have a significant number. I'm sorry.
You can just email it later.
I'm sure someone will chime in with my chat on Teams, and I'll have that number during this presentation.
Got it.
75 vacancies.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So on the next slide with the pretty blue, went one ahead. Can we go back one? It's slide 21. Perfect, thank you. There we go. So for more comparative data, this chart shows how we compare, as I mentioned, to other county entities. And again, our system was challenged, I'm sure like many county departments, when there was no funding for pay increases during the pandemic in fiscal 21. We were pleased that we were able to provide a one-time payment. By comparison, our pool has lagged the county's non-rep employees, teachers, and library employees. And again, we're just having trouble recruiting in various fields beyond the traditional, healthcare, very challenging getting nursing faculty. Our board set a priority to attract and retain high quality, diverse faculty and staff. And this budget with that 10% pool helps us make a little progress in offering competitive salaries. Next slide, just a recap of what I share. Again, the key pillars of our market-based system highlighted here. And then on slide 23, some data related to faculty. We do evaluate ourselves against our peer institutions for faculty salaries. So that's, we do include Howard Community College because they are contiguous, but that includes Montgomery, CCBC, and PG Community College. And based on average salaries, we are third for professor and associate professor ranks, losing ground from the prior year rank when we were second. Second for assistant professor and the instructor ranks. For part-time faculty, a couple of years ago, we did institute another level 3 for part-time faculty, so they can progress and earn more compensation for those classes. We are third at level 1, that's the intro level for faculty, which they tend to progress very quickly. And we're pleased that we are second at level 2 and level 3 for our part-time or adjunct faculty. The next slide provides a breakdown of the category we have for legal and regulatory compliance, rounding out the rest of our operating budget increases. This reflects institutional costs that we believe are absolute must-dos. Legal expenses are increasing based on projected activity as we adjust to new co-insurance or retention limits, which was implemented by one of our carriers based on industry trends. So we are providing an increase to accommodate for that self-insurance or retention limits. The last category of our increases, we have a placeholder in the budget in case we need to fund positions in support of the blueprint. We, again, for us, unfortunately, there is no funding source at the state level for our support of the blueprint. And as I mentioned, we are already seeing significant increases. So we do have a placeholder in the event that our very talented student support services folks determine that they might need a position or two to support our incoming dually enrolled students. And then the next slide, a recap of everything we just walked through, again, showing the increases with the majority coming from compensation. Lastly, just a reminder that our ask is restoration of $1 million in operating funding to the college in the operating budget. Moving on to our capital budget.
Before you there, anybody, any council member has any questions on their operating budget? Okay. Seeing no hands, on you again.
Thank you. Our ask of the council for our capital budget is to maintain the county executive's capital budget. On the next slide, this is how we present our capital budget, kind of in our own little format here. We'll walk through some of the details. In fiscal 24, and that, I don't know, we'll call it salmon color, the bulk of the funds are for our, what we call our deferred maintenance type projects, kind of in the last section of this chart. We did update our facilities master plan a couple years ago, actually during COVID, and the projects shown here do align with that updated plan, and that plan is available. We can email it to you. It is available on our website. On the next slide, recapping the fiscal 24 budget priorities, again, quite a bit of deferred maintenance type project, and Florestano is a project that we have underway right now. That's the building that was vacated when we moved into our beautiful new Health and Life Sciences building, and thank you for your support of that project. The Florestano building is vacant, and we have kind of a multi-phase project to renovate the 4th floor using college fund balance to create a learning innovation center for our students and faculty to experiment and work in kind of this new digital environment that we've emerged post-COVID. And then the 1st through 3rd floors will be renovated in the out years related to following our normal county and state process, where we do get up to a 50% match for the renovation of that building. On the next slide shows our priorities in the out years. The Dragon building, as Chris Trumbauer will talk about, it's not named after the mythical creature, it's named after a former faculty member, Henry Dragon. The Dragon Science Building is our out-year priority. If several council members have been through that building and can attest to the paltry state of affairs in that building. We are working with the county budget office to adjust the scope of this project to make it affordable for the county. So we are planning to, and that's why it's crossed through on this slide, eliminate the addition and focus on renovating what we have. And we believe that in adjusting the scope of that project, it will keep it and make it affordable for the county. And then in the out years, it was moved out 1 year by the county executive's budget, a renovation of our student services building beginning in, I believe, 2029. Yes, with design in 2029. And that completes our presentation.
Well, interesting. Quick question: How big was your if you can go, it was one of the recent capital project you just had. That was the student
new
services.
building?
Yeah, the new building.
The Health and Life Sciences building?
Yeah. How big was that?
175,000
Wow.
square feet. It was about a $117 million project funded roughly 50% by the county and 50% by the state. And if any council members would like a tour of that space, it's training our future healthcare workers. There's some fabulous simulation spaces for nurses and phlebotomists and physical therapy assistants. So we'd love to provide you with a tour of that space, and also our Clausen Center for Innovation and Skilled Trades.
Any questions on the capital side for the community college?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I see that. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies. It's good to see you. Thank you for being the first one out of the gate this morning. I agree with Ms. Beersmore. That facility is absolutely beautiful and really cool to see what's happening inside. So if you haven't been there, definitely set up a tour. I had a really quick question on the Dragon Building. What was the cost of the addition that has been removed? Oh, no.
It's a little tough because
Okay.
we haven't designed the building yet. We have to create this justification and feasibility study in order to be eligible for state funding.
Okay.
It's not a design, but that study is what indicated that we were going to be significantly over budget. So what I can tell you, and we just got a copy of that study late last week. What I can tell you is that by eliminating the addition, we're very close to the original budget estimates of $46 million. It was close to double that cost on initial. So,
Well, I appreciate the adjustment. Would you all be considering pursuing that in the future in addition, or is that just not even on the forefront right now?
it's a great question. That's probably something that will be decided long after I ride off into the sunset. But I think that given our enrollment patterns, I think given trends towards some virtual instruction, that I think with a renovation, and you've seen that space, it's desperately needed. We should be adequately, we should be okay.
Okay, that's all I
Great
wanted to know.
question.
Thank you.
And then over to Madam Vice Chair, Ms. Pickard.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Dr. Lindsay and Michelle. Thank you for the presentation. I want to go a little bit backwards in the CIP and have a question about the $750,000 for the Glen Burnie campus. I would love to hear a little bit about what that project is doing, what's the timeline, and then also what is the plan for the college to utilize that space from a course. What are you doing with the town center building? I mean, you're an anchor tenant there, and as you know, I'm focused on revitalizing that that town center. Would love to hear. I'm sorry, I said Michelle. It's Melissa. I'm so sorry. I knew that.
You're good.
It's early still. Anyways, any information you could share would be great. Thank you.
And we'd be happy to bring floor plans when we meet with you to show you the details of that space. But generally, we are going to be creating a new testing and tutoring center. So students that have to come in and physically to Glen Burnie Town Center to take a test. We'll be renovating that space and then creating really important tutoring space for students. Any student can use it, but it will be at Glen Burnie Town Center. If there is money, and given construction costs, not sure that it's likely, doing a renovation to the first floor. You know, when you walk in on the right-hand side, there's that huge staircase. So perhaps eliminating that to make it more welcoming opening. But the focus is on testing and tutoring. And we've done some other where we can carve out funds, whether from our operating budget or other sources, to revitalize some of the spaces. So I believe it's on the 4th floor. We have a snazzy new student lounge area that's been updated. Students use it a lot for studying, for group studying, for meetings, etc. We've done the work externally to spruce up the space as well, and have been so that's physically the built environment. And then enrollment wise, we've been very intentional in our scheduling there and seen significant increases in enrollment from a little pre-pandemic, and certainly during the pandemic when it was quite vacant there. So we are seeing enrollment increases as well in that space. But we would happily bring some pictures and some floor plans to our meeting with you to take a deeper dive.
Thank you. And if I may follow up, so what is the timeline? I mean, is the funding was appropriated in last year's budget. So what is the timeline? And I was aware of the first floor. I didn't realize that was a maybe not going to happen. So I look forward to seeing the floor plans in our one-on-one meeting. But is there a timeline?
Sorry, if I'm fingers crossed, this year. Fall of this year, we hope.
Does it answer any additional questions from any of the council members? All right, Ms. Breadmore, this was awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing the improvements that you all, and then we'll see what we can do in the budget to assist where we can. And Dr. Lindsay, thank you for your steadfast leadership in this entire process. So I'm grateful. So I think at this time, we will switch over to, I believe, the Board of Education. Got like 20 screens here.
It's we're libraries.
I'm sorry, the libraries. Skip was like, oh, what happened to me? So I want to bring on Mr. Auld, who has shepherded the library system for quite some time now. So Skip, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Pete. Well, it's great to see everyone. I appreciated seeing the community college presentation too, and they deserve all the funding you can give them. So there's just a shout out for them. Let me just go ahead and begin. I will read through my remarks, and once I'm not quite ready for the slides, if you could hold off on the slides for just a second. And okay. All right. Hello, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Pickard, and Council Members Volke, Hummer, Fiedler, Rodvian, and Ledbetter, and County Auditor Bolair. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to present our fiscal year 2024 budget request to you. We're grateful for your past support and grateful for the county executive's past support and his proposal for this year's budget. I first want to introduce my colleagues, Cedric Grant, who is our fantastic Chief Financial Officer, Rudy Rodella, our equally fantastic Chief Technology Officer, and Kathy Hollerback, Chief Operating Officer, completing the team of great executive leaders here with us today. They are here to answer your questions along with me after my presentation. I also want to introduce the chair of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Chris Nelson. Chris was president of St. John's College for 26 years. He continues on the teaching faculty there. Chris served on several mayoral and county executive transition teams. With that, I think Chris would like to say a few words.
Well, I just want to echo Skip's remarks and thanking the council for its past support. We're thanking you for hearing us out today and thanking you for considering our request in this budget meeting. Thank you for that.
Okay, Chris, I appreciate that. Okay, I'd like to start the slide presentation at this time. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. In this slide, you can see that library usage remains high. Anne Arundel residents are checking out more items than they were prior to the pandemic. The majority of county residents have library cards and use them every year. We have an enormous impact with all our programs, including kindergarten readiness at all locations and through reaching out to the pre-Ks, community events, and more. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Each year, I share a comparison with peer library systems. I encourage you to take time to study this slide, and I'll come back to it later in the presentation. The key statistics to focus on are, one, that we have far fewer staff than our peer libraries, and two, that our overall funding is significantly lower than what other counties are providing to their library systems. The impact of this will be fully apparent in a later slide. Next slide, please.
Hey, Mr. Skip, real quick, can you go back to the next slide? Is there a reason other like size, like Baltimore City or Prince George's, for example, are not included in this presentation, or at least in this slide?
Yeah, I mean, some years I have done that, and I certainly can pull that info for you if you would like me to get that to you later. I think that the reason I focused on these are the Baltimore suburban systems. So the city, the Pratt Library, Pratt system in Baltimore City, that is like a completely different type of operation. Prince George's is also different in different ways. It and Montgomery County are both tied in a lot more to sort of the DC metro area. And we kind of consider ourselves more part of the suburban Baltimore area.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Do you want us to get? Do you want me to get?
No, I don't need. I was just curious.
All right.
Initially, I was thinking it was a population thing, whereas us in the city have similar population, and then PG is right next door to us. That's all. That was the only reason.
The Enoch Pratt Library, and if you haven't been downtown to Baltimore to see their magnificent central library on Cathedral Street, I just highly recommend that. They received a $200 million renovation a couple of years ago, primarily from the state. They also get tremendous funding from the state, and it's just beautiful. And I will go with anybody who wants to tour that or any other libraries. So let me go back to the slide presentation. To that next slide after the comparison. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is the list of all 13 supplemental budget requests that we submitted to the county executive in January. The most important request is for market adjustments, and we are really grateful that the county executive proposed $485,800 toward the $2.9 million that is needed to bring our staff to parity with our neighbors. Mr. Pittman also proposed 3 new positions for our kindergarten readiness program, along with 1 more electric vehicle to bring us to 3 of these outreach vehicles that will bring the library to people. Our request number 8 was for money for buying books and other materials. However, we really need staff to do the added work of ordering and processing the books, DVDs, ebooks, etc. So therefore, we worked with our budget analyst, Darlene Flynn, and got agreement to change this funding to capital outlay. And by the way, Darlene is wonderful to work with, as is everybody in the budget office. The county executive also proposed funding for landscaping and snow removal contracts. This funding will make a tremendous difference as we keep working to build welcoming spaces in the buildings and grounds that are our libraries. And finally, the county executive proposes several one-time IT purchases. Next slide. So this may be the most important slide that I'm showing you today. As I mentioned, we requested $2.9 million for market rate adjustments for our staff. Our primary request of you, County Council, is to add $500,000 to the $485,765 that the county executive proposed. If you do, we will be 1/3 of the way to parity with the library systems in our region. And by the way, the compensation and classification study that we did 2 years ago and then updated for this budget year, that study did include Prince George's, Baltimore City, many more regional library systems that are comparable, and it included county governments for positions such as IT and maintenance, custodial building care technicians, all of those types of positions. But I want to continue with my written remarks. Why are we asking for nearly $3 million to get our staff to parity? So let me give you an example. A library associate position is the one in the library that is most comparable to a teacher in the Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Library associate positions require a bachelor's degree and certification by the Maryland State Library. That certification used to come from the Maryland State Board of Education until the state library gained independence from the Board of Ed at the state level. So our library associate, so a beginning teacher in Anne Arundel makes $50,247. How much do you think a beginning library associate makes here? It's $41,582. How much do you think a beginning library associate makes in nearby library systems? In Prince George's, it's $49,527. In Baltimore County, library associates start at $46,658. Would you please go back to the comparison slide? So remember, I showed you this slide before. To use the words of our wonderful new superintendent of schools, Dr. Mark Bedell, it is embarrassing how woefully underfunded we are in comparison with our peers. To give you one more example of what this means for AACPL employees, here's a comparison of starting branch manager salaries. In Anne Arundel, our branch managers, a position that requires a master's degree and many years of experience, start at $65,929. In Prince George's, they start at $76,426. And in Baltimore County Public Library, they start at $92,409. That is $26,000 more than we pay, 40% more. These are just some basic examples of why we must get to parity someday, some way. Please go on to the slide on capital improvement projects. So Rudy Rodella is our Chief Technology Officer, and he manages 3 divisions of our support operations, including facilities and capital projects. I want to thank Rudy for his work with our Facilities Director, Maribel Ibrahim, in developing and implementing our capital improvement plan. You will hear his words echoing in this uplifting and I hope inspiring part of my presentation. We want to thank the Council for their continued commitment to ensuring that everyone in Anne Arundel County enjoys convenient access to the community building and life-changing public spaces in our libraries. Through the Council's support, we will soon have 3 brand new library spaces: Bush Annapolis, which opened in June 2020, New Mountain Road, which we expect to open in July this year, and New Riviera Beach, which should be open by August or September. As the Council is well aware, these spaces are rare and vital places for the community to gather, share, and thrive. They are key to continuing the American experiment in democracy. In fiscal year 2024, with the Council's approval of the proposed CIP, we will begin in earnest the new Glen Burnie project. Over the summer, we'll select the architect and engage the public in the programming and design for the new library. The new library will also co-locate the county's Cultural Resources Lab and Local History Resource Center with the library. This initiative will centralize cultural resources activities in a modern, accessible building to improve public awareness and visibility of these important resources, in addition to providing the library's educational, enriching, and inspirational services to the community. We also request the continuation of the Millersville Library project at its current scope and timing. This year, we're requesting a one-time addition to the library renovation project of $300,000, making a project total of $650,000 for FY24. This additional funding will allow us to complete interior renovations that were interrupted by pandemic supply chain issues that have resolved just this year. And lastly, not shown on this slide, we have a request for $187,000 for a feasibility study and possible engineering and construction plans to install an elevator at the Brooklyn Park Library. This library, built before the Americans with Disabilities Act, suffers a major accessibility issue. The library programming space does not have ADA acceptable access from inside the main library space. Library customers have to exit the building and make a long circle outside the library to enter a back door to the programming space. Library staff frequently see this present an inconvenient and even hostile barrier. Our customers deserve better access to this library. An elevator will give this access and solve a major usability problem at Brooklyn Park Library. This concludes our presentation. Our most critical request is an additional $500,000 for the market adjustments to bring library employee salaries closer to parity with our peers in the region. I again want to thank you for your critical support of this library system that we hold in trust for future generations. And on this day of all days, may the 4th be with you. We will now take your questions.
I see Ms. Pickard, Madam Vice Chair, over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Auld and your entire team. I want to thank you for that very informative presentation. I love all those details. I love the county comparisons. We have a lot of work to do, obviously not just with the library system, but with our county workforce as a whole. But I do appreciate your advocacy. And then I wanted to talk about the Glen Burnie library renovation. I'm super excited. We've been talking about it for a long time. The one thing that still stops me in my tracks is the timeline. From the time we start design to the time we're going to have a shovel in the ground, it's still a long time. So I'm hoping we can work with the county processes to maybe get the shovel in the ground a little sooner. But can you tell me a little bit about how the library system is working or plans to work with the community to engage and talk about the design and functionality of that new library?
Yes, I sure will. I want to mention one thing that we've already done to try to accelerate the process, and then I'd like Rudy to speak to the community engagement process, and possibly Kathy as well. One of the things we did last fall was to talk with Chris Trumbauer, the budget officer, as well as I had talked with Chris Phipps prior to him retiring, and have since then been talking and working with Karen Merck, the new director of Department of Public Works. And so they worked with us, and it's been great to start the process of architect selection. So we've been putting that in place. Rudy can give you more details, but why don't I just ask Rudy to explain kind of how we will engage with the public, which will be very similar to what we did with Bush Annapolis.
Sure. Yes, sir. To finish off the thought that Mr. Auld introduced, we are meeting with Karen and the DPW team on the 10th of this month, next week, about a novel process for the design build process for the new library, which we hope it'll, like I said, it'll be a novel process. It'll be something we haven't done before, so we'll need to walk through some details, but we hope that will accelerate the timeline before we get the first shovel in the ground, as you mentioned. So the engagement process with the community, it's something that we do with all of our library spaces. We bring the architects in. The architects' first task is to listen to the community. We will ask them certain questions about what they want to see in the library, what spaces are more important to them, how they plan on using the library, and what the community's overall goal for having the space in their area and in their community, and what they're going to be using it for. That first step is mostly listening and gathering information, and then taking that and then putting together an initial program for the library. The programming is the size and the number of spaces that are going to be in the new building. And then it becomes an iterative process. The architects take that information back, they come up with the first design, and they come back and talk to the community again and get their input on what the first proposal is. It goes back and forth a couple of times until we arrive at a general outline for the building that we hope will meet their needs. We give that one last presentation for the community, and then the architects go back and then start actually putting pencil to paper and coming up with drawings and seeing what the building is going to look like. That in a nutshell is what that process looks like.
Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up.
No, please. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. I know the Annapolis library is really, really lovely and beautiful. I just toured and spent some time in the Glen Burnie Library a couple weeks ago, and everybody's community has unique history and has a special place in the community's heart, right? So I don't want to sound like Glen Burnie's any different than any other community, but there is a rich history there that goes back, and I would encourage the architects you choose to spend time at the Keithy Library and understand the whole history of the library, but also to engage the staff that are the boots on the ground in the library. They know the use, they know the functionality needs, maybe a little more even than an individual community member, if that makes any sense. But we definitely want to engage the community. Would like to be a resource to the library system to help bring community members involved in that, so that the outcome is something the Glen Burnie community and the greater community can have a lot of pride in. I'm super excited about this. The Glen Burnie Library is, I believe, one of the highest utilized in the county and has the largest catchment area. Yes. So it is a long awaited project, and the community is super excited to get it going. So I look forward to working with you guys. I just wanted to add those points in there. I'm happy to be a resource and excited to get it started. Thank you.
Well, I very much appreciate it, ma'am. We'll be in touch. We definitely will be in touch.
Yeah, we definitely will call upon all of your connections and your own insights and experience, Ms. Pickard. So you're right about the catchment area. Basically we serve about 100,000 people out of that library. That's why the project really became two. The recommendation of the previous facilities plan was that we should have two libraries, and that's why we have this new Millersville library. I want to take this time, I had not planned this, but just to say that we've been hearing from the Veterans Commission a lot. We're planning this November to have celebrations of veterans all through the month of November. That's a new thing for us to do it on it. We've done a lot of programming around Memorial Day and Veterans Day in previous years. But recently, the Veterans Commission let us know that up in Montgomery County, the Rockville Library became renamed the Rockville Memorial Library. And because of the proximity of the new Millersville Library to Crownsville Veterans Cemetery, we haven't quite figured out exactly how to name this, but we are thinking that we'd like that to become the Millersville Memorial Library, or possibly the Millersville Veterans Memorial Library. So you kind of are hearing it here first. We haven't really talked about this outside the library board and so on. But as that moves along, that'll be another great project.
Well, Mr. Auld, you involve veterans, and you'll certainly have a large advocacy group to make sure that Millersville Library gets built. So kudos to you for using all the resources at your disposal. I think that sounds pretty cool. I'd love to hear more about it, and I'd love to see a second library on the Old Mill complex. So I look forward to working with you with your team.
That sounds great, and I will just point out, I don't know about others, but I do know that both Mr. Rodella and Mr. Smith are Marines, and so and veterans, and so we appreciate all the service they have given to the country. Well,
that's I definitely appreciate that, and I even got my blouse here right next to me
Okay.
sitting on my chair. One of the things I do want to give you credit for the last, at least since I've known you, easily over a decade, the library system has evolved in a way that, I always tell folks, if you don't evolve, you wind up perishing, right? And so the library system is not just about books, even though it's library, but it has evolved in a way that has kept up with time and the needs of communities. So I definitely want to commend you on transitioning our library system to be more of an asset to the community, so that it continues to be leveraged in a way that meets the demands of today. And so one of the things I was going to bring up to you, and I had thought about this because of technology and COVID, when we were going through that process, and we got on Zoom. Like even now, we're doing our budget hearings on Zoom. which is certainly convenient. Has there been any discussions about like having like little breakout rooms where folks can, you may even have this in some of the other branches. I can't recall if it's at the Severn one. At least I don't think I saw one. It's a Severn one. Could be in Odenton, where if a resident wanted to host participate in a Zoom session, they could go to the library and actually be participate in that from your resources.
So let me just let Kathy address that question. I appreciate the question, and I think she's and also I'd like Kathy, maybe if you have time, to just give a little bit of insight into the kindergarten readiness outreach program and the overall kindergarten readiness program. And then I see that Mr. Nelson has his hand up too.
Sure. So to answer your question, Chairman Smith, this is a huge request from our customers, and we do have these rooms in some of our branches. We do have them at Severn. We have a bunch of them at the New Annapolis branch.
Oh, okay.
We are going to have 4 at the New Revere Beach branch, so we're really excited about that. We have a couple of things in progress to bring in kind of like an open pod and put it in the library to create this, because it's such a demand. There's such demand for it, and that would be at Maryland City and trying to add that at Odenton. So we're looking at all the different ways, because that is a huge request. We also just launched this week the OWL technology, so that customers can check out these OWL cameras to put in the meeting that they're having and do a Zoom or a hybrid meeting in the meeting room there in the library using our technology. So I'm really excited about that. We're just launching it this week, and it's going to make it easier for our customers to have meetings at the library. So some of the older branches don't have it yet. We're trying to be as creative as possible to get it to everyone, because it is a huge need, but it definitely will be. We're already thinking about how to put it in New Glen Burnie. I worked there for 12 years, New Glen Burnie, so super excited about that project. Really quickly, because I know you have a lot to do today, just as Skip asked, I'll give you a quick update on kindergarten readiness. It's going really, really well. We hired 6 new staff members based on funding from last year. They are all hired, trained, and out doing the work. Since this new fiscal year, July 1st, with the new staff and the new support, our programming attendance, and not just early literacy, but all our programming attendance, because our philosophy is kindergarten readiness involves everyone, involves the families and the children, everyone. Our programming attendance is up 36%. We have 3,647 new kids signed up for 1,000 books before kindergarten since July 1st, with 159,669 books read just as part of that program. So we are out there doing it, getting everybody involved. Our vehicles, the 2 vehicles we got with this current year's budget, are being wrapped as we speak. So they will be out really, really soon. Some delays on that, but we're getting them. So thank you very much for that funding last year. We're excited to whatever we can get to enhance that program in our current budget. Thank you.
And I see Mr. Nelson. Please, sir, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to highlight 2 points on the kindergarten readiness program. The board is very excited about this. And Mr. Alt and I met with Dr. Bedell, school system, to talk about the kindergarten readiness, and he is equally excited about it and interested in working with the library system to enhance that program and to help students get ready for school. The other is that Skip mentioned $500,000 program for an increase for salaries. And said that it would bring us closer to parity. It brings us only 1/3 of the way parity. So I want to emphasize the modesty of that particular bequest. It'll take a while before we can get all the way. And of course, anything that the council can do to help us there will be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members? All right.
Mr. Smith, let me just say, I think it's worth noting today that, especially for our former trustee, Mr. Volke, that this is the year of District 3 in Pasadena. We are going to open 2 new libraries. And I know that we've heard from some people in the in the Mountain Road area who are a little dismayed that we're moving, and we loved that location, but we're just moving down the road a bit, and we're going to have a great opportunity at Lakeshore Plaza with a new Mountain Road library. It'll be smaller, but it'll be small and mighty. And then Riviera Beach is going to be awesome. I think it's just going to be so great. And it probably should have opened a year ago, but the supply chain issues and one thing or another just pushed us back. But it will open, and it'll be a treasure for that community. So so you should be happy about that. And anyway, I just think it's worth, I don't know what to call it, the year of the Pasadena libraries or something like that.
Well, Mr. Skip, from the way you organize your team during the budget town halls, to your ability to articulate and defend the public library system, you should have ran for office. I think you would have did well in that capacity, because I think Councilman Volk is ready to vote on the budget just simply for those 2 items right there. But I will go to Ms. Rodvian, who has her hand up as well.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. I just really wanted to express that I intend to advocate for that salary parity funding request that you mentioned. I feel like it's long overdue, and we need to get moving in that direction. So hopefully we can find something under the couch cushions somewhere, or there'll be some way that we can get that, because like you said, the Dr. Bedell's words, calling the pay disparities with our neighboring counties are a little embarrassing.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. Thank you.
And Mr. Volke, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Skip, I don't like to draw attention to that. I always get a lot of blowback from my colleagues when they see what's happening in this. But I will just note that to my colleagues from District 2, to the points that she was making about how long this takes, while I would love to take credit for the fact that these things are in the budget, they are really a byproduct of 12 years of county executives, largely from District 3, and some of the funding, and also where the library needs were. I don't mean to dissuade from that, and certainly Mountain Road is a little different, but I just make that point that this has been in the budget for a long time. The Mountain Road, not the Mountain Road, but Riviera Beach has been in for, gosh, at least 6 or 7 budget cycles, at least, probably longer than that. So I look forward to seeing the new Glen Burnie Library as well, because I think that's a huge need for the library system, but it takes a long time.
Yeah, you shouldn't shy away from that at all, because it's great. You should just, it really, we need to pay attention there. And that is a very deserving community that has waited a long time. I'm just so pleased we're having that. And frankly, the Glen Burnie Library, just like Annapolis, they both serve way beyond their own kind of borders, like people from Severna Park and Arnold and all that, and Broadneck, they all come down and use the Annapolis Library. People from all over use the Glen Burnie Library, especially people in the Pasadena area. So it's, we find a lot of our customers will go to multiple libraries, and everybody on council should be pleased with the progress that we're making.
Thank you.
All right. I thank you for this presentation, Skip. I'm looking to see if there's any additional questions, and I see no further hands being raised. Thank you for the presentation, and I think we will now transition to the school system, the Board of Education. So take about 60 seconds there, and what I want to do is introduce and bring up Dr. Tobin, who is the president of the school board, and she will take it from there.
Thank you.
See you, Skip.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
Good morning. It took them a minute to rejoin me, so.
Oh, no issue, no problem.
Well, let me begin. Before I start, I just want to add, as the previous folks have, my thanks both to the community college and the public libraries. They're both incredible partners for us, and we're tremendously supportive of what they do. And we're especially grateful, as was noted, to the public libraries for the work on kindergarten readiness, which is obviously critical for our work, and I think for everyone. So with that, good morning, Chairman Smith, Vice Chairman Pickard, and members of the County Council. I want to take a minute to acknowledge other members of the board who have joined us today and who, like me, wish to partner with you to move our school system and county forward. I believe we have on deck today the Vice President of the board, Mr. Robert Silkworth, who of course represents District 2. We also have Ms. Gloria Dent, who represents District 1. We have Ms. Dana Schalheim, who represents District 5, and we have Ms. Michelle Corkadell, who represents District 7. And I'm grateful to them for being here today. As I said in my statement after the county executive's budget address on Monday, I believe this proposal represents a huge investment in our children, in our school system, and in the future of our county. Dr. Bedell has been very clear about his fervent desire to make our school system great and about what it will take to do so. I am confident that he and his team will do everything they can to maximize the investment the county makes in our students. Please know that we as a board stand ready to continue our partnership with you in this work. I would make just one more ask of you. As you go through page after page in your budget books, as you have conversations about dollars allocated to projects, and as you consider changes to the county executive's proposal, please don't see the lines as simply funding. Each of those lines, at least in our budget, represents a child or a group of children. Every penny you allocate impacts the life of a student. That's our focus, and I know it is yours as well. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Bedell.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Tobin. And thanks to all of the members of the County Council for the opportunity today to discuss the path forward for our school system. I want to say at the outset that I have been very encouraged by the conversations I've had with each of you since I've arrived in August. I also appreciate the time you have afforded me, and I look forward to more conversations in the future. I believe we are all focused on the same mission, becoming great. Mr. Stansky will have an opportunity to go over the key parts of our budget in detail, but I'd like to touch on just a few topics that confront us as a school system. You've heard from Mr. Aud about the embarrassing, or I would just say the disparities in pay gaps, not just for teachers or other county employees, but also for other employees in various units within the Anne Arundel County Public School District. We're confronted with increasing mandates of the blueprint, the expiration of ESSER and other grants, and the need to move some of these innovative programs we created as a result to our general fund. But also, when you think about everything that's happening across the United States, the desire and the need to meet the social and emotional needs of our staff and students, we know that these things are very important. It's also important to note that you have a lot to be proud of as community members in this county. We boast a 95% rating with 3-star rated schools or more. That's tied for #1 in the state with Howard County. And we're doing this despite some of the significant gaps that exist. But when I look at data, and trust me, everybody, I look at data hard. We're already creating new templates around how we're going to be data-driven as an organization that I plan to roll out to the board when I do my annual evaluation with them. We also know that there are areas where we are sitting right at state average. And Anne Arundel County shouldn't be hovering around state average under any major indicator that is evaluated by the state of Maryland. And I know for me, in order for us to go from being a really good system to a great system, it's going to require the intentionality and the strategic thinking around how do we make sure that every single one of our kids are able to thrive in this school district. Many of you are parents or you have children who have graduated from this school district. I don't want a single one of our kids feeling that they have to go find another option for schooling. We should be able to do that for the people who are paying their taxes in this community. You should feel confident that you can trust your kids in the Anne Arundel County Public School District. There's another piece that I want to note that I think is important, because when we talk about budgets, and you can't see this, but this is a document that is at the state website. And a lot of people will say, well, you guys are requesting these increases, but maybe you need to trim down at central office. I have data here that tells you, I could tell you all what FAT looks like. I had FAT in Kansas City, a district with only 14,000 kids, and I had 12 people in my communication department. We got 85,000 kids here, and we have 6 people in our communication department, with the possibility of adding 1 more through your approval. That will help our bilingual families. But Anne Arundel County is the 2nd rated school district with the lowest non-instructional staff ratio out of the 24 school districts in the state. You know who number 1 is? Howard County. And they beat us by 1%. So we know that we're already running a very lean and efficient central office. And many of those people are also now having to go into our schools to compensate for the vacancies we have, because we're just not simply competitive. And as I've said, 95% of our schools 3-star rated or better. We have 4 2-rated schools in this district. And I've already told our building principals, I don't want a single 2-rated school in this district. I know a district, and I'm not going to say the name, y'all can guess, that I worked at. 13 1-rated schools, 49 2-rated schools. Only 65% of their schools have a 3-star rating or better. We're not trying to fall back. That is the reason why the budget that we put forth in front of you was a budget that was fiscally prudent, that really allowed for us to try to address these staffing gaps that we have, so that we can move the needle for every single one of our students. So with that being said, we've had an opportunity to talk at length with the county executive and his team about these areas. And it's clear from his proposal that he heard us. We are grateful for that work. And as Dr. Tobin said, we are excited about working with you over the next month or so to finalize this budget. With that, if it's okay with you, Chairman Smith, Mr. Stansky will take us through some of the specifics in our budget.
No, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Mr. Smith, is a preference for me to go through the operating budget, stop for questions, and then to the capital? Perfect. Okay, so if we could pull up the operating budget template, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so as Dr. Bedell alluded to, we worked with the county budget office and the county executive on this proposal. We are super thrilled with what was released on May the 1st, and I'll walk you through what was included. So we'll start on the revenue side. So the federal government, we're projecting flat revenue. This is revenue we get for Fort Meade. It's called Impact Aid. And so it's revenue we get for Fort Meade being located in Anne Arundel County. On the state side, we're looking at a significant increase of $60.1 million with the budget that was just passed by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Moore. The increase here is really twofold. One, we are now seeing an increase in our enrollment again, about 1,200 students over last school year. And then also we saw a significant jump in our free and reduced price meal counts. We are now over just about 40% students who qualify for free and reduced price meals. And so that is also cause for the significant increase in state aid. The May 1st release from the county executive included $45 million of new county money over last fiscal year at $879.7 million. The only other change on the unrestricted side is the local. We're seeing about $3.8 million increase there. And again, that is due mostly to interest income increases. With the higher interest rates, we are seeing additional returns in our cash balances. On the restricted side, you're going to see this negative here for the next couple fiscal years, and this is a reflection of the expiration of ESSER funding. Specifically around here, this is a reflection of remaining ESSER 1 funding being expired and ESSER 2 then ending on September 30th of 2023. We still have our remaining largest grant of ESSER 3, which was a total of $108 million. That funding will expire in September 30 of 24. So you can imagine as we talk through the ESSER funding cliff, as we call it, you'll see some items today for next fiscal year, but those line items will increase significantly for those programs that we would like to move over to the general fund in fiscal 25. Other two areas of increases. First is our internal service fund for healthcare, about $5.2 million. This is a reflection of increased employee contributions into the healthcare fund. And then our food service fund, we're looking at a pretty significant increase of $17.7 million. This is a reflection of compensation increases for the employees in food service, as well as the cost of food continuing to rise. Just a reminder on the food service fund that it is a self-performing fund, and so all revenues and expenditures are generated within the fund. So all in, we're looking at $1.6 billion in revenue, which is about $118.9 million increase. So 7.7% increase over last year. So the question, what is that increase going to pay for? We'll start at the top. Excited to report here that our requests for our compensation enhancements were all fully funded by the county executive's proposal. This includes a step increase for all eligible employees or step equivalent, as well as a 6% cost of living increase for all employees. We currently have in our schools, our Unit 4 teaching assistants, their workday is currently tied to the school day, or to the student day. We are asking for an additional 30 minutes of work time for those employees to help with arrival and dismissal of students. Next on the list, we've had, as we've talked about, our challenges around filling positions. It has been especially troublesome in our special education area. And so we are looking to build permanently into our budget a $2,000 recruitment and retention bonus for all special education Unit 1 personnel. This would include obviously teachers, but also your speech therapists, your occupational therapists, your physical therapists, folks like that. We have also used grant funds this year to pay bonuses to those employees. And again, but we're now looking to to permanently put a bonus in here to really reflect the additional work and responsibility and the unique challenges those employees have in our district. Next line is a $1.3 million increase for our required national board certification increase. So employees who achieve national board certification and meet the state requirement will, flip back to the first page again. Yeah, will receive a $10,000 state mandated salary enhancement. And if they work in a high needs school identified by the state of Maryland and our board, they will receive a $17,000 pay increase. The last two items, we're looking to increase our substitute pay by $5 a day to about $125 a day now for a substitute teacher. And then for our bus contractors, we did a 10% COLA increase to recruit and retain drivers. Last year, we're looking to do that again this year. We currently have 39 bus driver vacancies at the moment. We do have 47 folks in some form of training for their CDL license. We still need to get that number down. We now have all routes covered with a certified driver, but we have no substitute drivers, which is desperately needed for when drivers call out, as well as we have had to collapse routes in order to at least provide some level of service to students, which has caused some crowding in some of our buses. And so now we need these additional drivers to break those routes apart so that we can get kids to school on time safely. So that is the compensation piece. A couple other things to note: the county did add additional turnover of $3 million, meaning this additional savings of $3 million. We worked with the county on this based on our vacancy rate and our turnover rate. We feel comfortable putting in that additional savings of $3 million into the budget. The first thing that was not funded was the FMLA placeholder. So last legislative session, the General Assembly passed a law requiring employers to provide paid FMLA. This session, the General Assembly passed legislation to delay that requirement by 1 year. And so this is just a reflection of the delay of that requirement for a year. Moving on to the commitment section, this was fully funded. We're opening 2 new schools in the 24-25 school year, Old Mill West High School and West County Elementary School. This is the staffing and resources needed for this school year to get those schools up and running. We are also opening for this upcoming school year, 23-24, a new elementary school. It's going to be run by Chesapeake Science Point, so it'll be a charter school. So $6.3 million for that new elementary school, and then $3.2 million for our existing charter and contract schools. As our budget goes up, their per pupil share of that budget will go up as well. And so this is the calculation to get them those resources. On to blueprint mandates. The law requires beginning next school year, we send $62 per student to the Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Board to provide career counseling for students in grades 6 through 12. This will be in conjunction with both the Workforce Development Board as well as the Anne Arundel County Community College. So it's a mandated 3-entity MOU that must be entered, but the fiscal transaction is the school district sending $5.1 million over to the Workforce Development Board, who will then develop a plan in conjunction with both the community college and the school district to implement a new career counseling program. Next, concentration of poverty. This is the money that funds our community schools. With the state budget passing, we're going to get $2.9 million in additional dollars. We currently have 15 community schools. Next year, we will add 8 to that list. So we will get to 23 community schools for the 23-24 school year. The next item is college and career readiness. You've heard about our increases in dual enrollment because of the blueprint. This is part of the funding that allows us to pay to have a program that is tuition free now for all Anne Arundel County high school students for community college classes, both dual credit and dual enrollment. And then a small increase in our K-3 tutoring program that is also blueprint mandated. And it's next page. The next section is again that ESSER funding cliff. And so we did ask for 2 FTEs and $143,000 for a program manager and specialist. in CTE land. We are able to fund internally 1 position, which will be our computer science program specialist. So no additional dollars, but just FTE authorization. Same with McKinney-Vento secretary. This is a person in the central office that helps coordinate all the services for our McKinney-Vento students. Again, no additional dollars needed. We're able to fund that internally. We just need the FTE authorization. We did ask for $549,000 for the science of reading for training around our elementary teachers. This was not funded in the budget, but we do have a very robust program budgeted in our ESSER 3 grant. And so this cut does not really impact the program. So we will implement with using our ESSER 3 dollars, but as I said, those then expire in the 24-25 school year. So I would imagine you'll see this line item in our fiscal 25 request. We continue to transition some of the technology purchases that we made with our ESSER funding during the pandemic. We're now a 1-to-1 school district with Chromebooks, and as well as we've now all of our Unit 1 and Unit 4 employees now have laptops. Believe it or not, pre-pandemic, they were on desktops. We now have all of those employees on laptops, but those costs were all fronted with ESSER dollars, and we are transitioning those over to the general fund. And then finally, great news, we had with our ESSER dollars funded a new school, a virtual academy for medically fragile students, grades 3 through 12. We had asked to move the funding and the FTEs for this wonderful school over to the general fund, and the county executive has put full funding into this school. And just for your, just so you know, this school serves about 550 students, and was actually rated a 4-star school through our accountability measurement at the state. And so we're super excited to be able to keep this program moving forward. It is unique in Maryland. We're the only one in the state that actually has an actual school. Most other districts have programs. This is an actual school that has been wildly successful in the 2 years we have implemented it. On to other general program enhancements, we received full funding for our alternative education enhancements, which is starting the new ACE program in the Meade cluster. We currently have one in the Annapolis cluster. This is alternatives for students who get suspended. So a place for them to go to receive services, both social, emotional, and academic. And then we are expanding our RISE program. It's currently housed at Georgetown East. It will be relocated to the new Rippling Woods Elementary School. And this is, again, an alternative setting for our elementary aged learners. We've seen a rise in increased behavioral issues there. And so the need for this program is great. So happy to be able to expand it as well as bring it over to that new facility. The Board of Education did request a constituent service liaison in the budget, and that was not funded by the county executive. Early childhood, we have full funding. We used our ESSER grant to pre-fund 8 3-year-old classrooms. We then asked to move those 30 positions over to the general fund. The county executive concurred with that recommendation. 3-year-old, we traditionally have only done 4-year-olds, but the blueprint does mandate that both 3 and 4-year-olds are served with in the pre-K program. And so this was our first 8 classrooms. Again, we used ESSER funding initially. We're now transitioning that over to the general fund. The second request is to then add 3 more 3-year-old classrooms, and we are doing that for the cost of $1.2 million. And again, this serves, these programs serve what we call Tier 1 children in the law. Tier 1 children are either students who have an IEP, students whose home language is not English, or Tier 1 income eligibility, which is 300% of the poverty level. And so for next year, for example, for a family of 4, that income threshold is about $90,000. One of our actually fastest growing population is our English language development students. We asked for 3 bilingual facilitators. We are receiving, or the proposal has us receiving full funding for that. We're able to fund internally a new position in our communications office that Dr. Bedell alluded to, and this will help with our bilingual families, ensuring that they receive all the district communications. We did ask for 19 English language development teachers and 2 teaching assistants. The county executive was able to fund 10 of those at $834,000. And we're also requesting just the FTE authorization for a bilingual data assistant at our International Student and Family Welcome Center. And this position will help our families register more quickly. On the student support enhancement side, again, we've asked to expand our EEE program to the Old Mill cluster that was not funded in the county executive's request. These other 3 positions, the JROTC half-time teacher, a registrar at North County High School, and the additional security specialist, we just need FTE authorization. We were able to reallocate existing budgets to support these FTEs. On the recruitment and retention front, we were able to support with the reallocation of resources, the assistant manager and recruitment. So we just need the FTE authorization for that. We did ask for 4 new teacher mentors. We call them Right Start Advisors. We did also ask for 5 teaching assistants for kindergarten and 5 permanent substitutes, neither of which was funded in the county executive's proposal. Again, trying to meet the needs of our students from a social and emotional standpoint. We continue to see large investments in this area, and happy to report that the county executive did fund 6 of our 12 assistant principal requests. We still have about roughly 30 elementary schools that do not have assistant principals. This includes our 3 special centers, so definitely 3 of these 6 will be going to our special education centers who currently do not have assistant principals. So excited for that. We are asking we have temporary employees that currently work as community ambassadors. We are looking to make 2 of those folks full-time. We found the resources internally for those positions. We just need the FTE authorization. And then going down the list, we asked for 2 pupil personnel workers, the county executives funding 1. We asked for 3 school counselors, and county executives funding 2, 4 psychologists, county executives funding 3, and then we asked for 3 social workers and a secretary for that office. And the county executive has agreed to fund the 3 social workers, but not the secretary. Moving to the last page. Special education. So we did have a series of FTEs ask for special education. We did not receive any funding for this. I will say, I think one of the things with this budget is, like as I mentioned earlier, we've had some vacancy issues in special education. And so I think the focus with this budget was really to try and retain the folks that are currently teaching in special education, and with the bonuses that we're proposing to pay and the stepping COLAs to recruit new folks into those existing vacancies to get them fully staffed before we start adding new positions. But all of these requests were not funded in the executive's proposal. And finally, last but not least, transportation. We have a temporary bilingual assistant. We're looking to make that a full-time position, and so in the front office to help again with communication with families. And then our alternative vehicle program, which is vans and SUVs that we've procured to now take our non-public students to their schools, which has then freed up our yellow buses to help with the transportation shortfall. We are getting the 22 positions, both drivers and aides that we asked for at $1.2 million. The vehicles and the contracted services on the vehicle front, we're able to use funding from this school year to purchase the vehicles that we need, although the lag time on those has been, 12 to 15 months. And then on the contracted services, we're able to absorb those contracted buses within our existing contracted service line item in transportation. So while this is a cut here, I think we're able to do what we need with the funding that was proposed. So again, all in with 208 positions, $118.9 million, 7.7% increase. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions from your colleagues or yourself.
Okay, I see Ms. Fiedler's hand is up. Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen, Mr. Bedell, Dr. Bedell, Mr. Stansky, thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to jump right into something that has come up every fourth quarter, that fourth quarter transfer, to understand what happens on the back end. At what point in the year does the Board of Education start to understand that there is additional, or there's going to be over funding of the salaries and wages, and in the contractual services there's an underrun? And is it because the contractual services, there's contracts that are added through the year that were not anticipated, or is the cost on existing contracts starting to run high? I'm just trying to understand, at what point does the Board of Ed make a decision, we're going to have to start shifting money, and why?
I'll start with that, Ms. Fiedler. So we do 2 transfers a year, both in the second quarter. We do a review, both of our general funds and our restricted grants, and then we send that to you for approval. And I think we did that in January this year, and the approval was in February. And then we typically follow again the county's budget timeline too. And so the board will have a fourth quarter request in front of them on May the 10th, which we will then send over to the council. And so we usually use the month of March and April to, we're projecting on a monthly basis. I should say too, that we send monthly reports to the board on our spend, and that those reports also get sent to the executive branch and the legislative branch over at the county as well. And so those are reviewed monthly, but then the deep dive really happens in that fourth quarter. And so, I think what I would say is on the underspend, right? We know we're having vacancies. And so that has been, known fairly early. And so a couple things with that. One, this year we determined to pay $1,000 bonus at Christmas time with or at holiday time with those additional funds. And then as to whether to make a determination whether to transfer those funds out into other line items, I think two things. One, some of it is emergencies or cost overruns, right? Like I had a boiler fail at a school, so I need to get additional contracted services over into that program to ensure that the boiler gets back up and running. And then two, it is if there's additional funding both on the revenue side or on the in savings of, say, salaries, we will request additional expenditures above and beyond what we normally would do, because especially on the new revenue side, we don't want to spend new revenue on recurring items. So we typically use that new revenue for one-time infrastructure improvements around IT, maintenance, plant operations, and even some, instructional materials. So that's typically our process around that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And Mr. Chair, if I may ask a follow-up question or just make a statement. Moving forward, for me personally, I saw such positive reaction to that $1,000 bonus that Dr. Bedell did. I think it was so positively received. Teachers felt appreciated. I would like to see moving forward us be so diligent in protecting that salary and wages transfer, because it was intended to pay our teachers, and that's where it should stay.
If I can, I would definitely agree with you on that. I mean, we ran into something similar in Kansas City, and what it ends up happening is when you have vacancies or people are having to fill gaps, it's a heavier workload on them, right? It increases the level of stress that these educators have, and we know right now. I shared this data. I have not gone to the National Education site to look at what their latest data said, but I know between 2020 and 2022, we're 600,000 teachers less in the field of education. And I got to believe that number has increased even more. So anything that we can do, and this is what I told the board, if I can staff Kansas City Public Schools, one of the arguably 5 most difficult school districts to run in the country, and I'm fully opening up the school year with 3 vacancies, 7 vacancies, a lot of it is around this appreciation piece that you were just talking about, Councilwoman Fiedler. Take care of your people, treat them the way that they need to be treated. We already know that we're significantly underpaid in education. We incur a ton of debt to do what we love to do. It's not like Finland, where it's valued as an educator and the country pays for your undergrad, your master's, and your doctorate degree. So my attitude to the school board was, if we take care of our people, we will reduce the amount of turnover, and over time, they will go out and start recruiting that y'all need to come and work in Anne Arundel County. And I think some of that is beginning to happen because of these little things that we're doing to show appreciation.
Sounds like we might be on the same page.
We
Thank
are.
you, Dr. Bedell.
I see, Madam Vice Chair, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Dr. Tobin and Dr. Bedell and Mr. Stansky for being here and giving us the annual BOE presentation. I have a few questions, so I might give my colleagues a chance. I'm going to focus obviously on operating right now, but I wanted to ask just a request if you could send over the list of the 23 community schools. I want to know which ones they are. You don't have to answer them now. I also wanted to have a quick question about the new Chesapeake Science Point School. I know we're adding an elementary component there, and I believe it's a charter school, so it can have access from the whole county. So I would love for someone to tell me a little bit about the enrollment lottery process and how adding the elementary is going to affect access at elementary, middle, and high school enrollment for county residents? Because I get this question all the time.
You want me to tackle that one? Team, I think for us, I know there is a request that has come to us. I believe this is the same charter we're talking about, right? Where they're talking about wanting to merge. And to your point, Vice Chair Pickard, part of my concern with the merger is, does it stifle access? Once you get in, it is almost virtually impossible from an entry point standpoint for families that are moving in, families that may be part of the military who are coming in at different points that want access to not be able to have access. And I think that's been the piece that I have opposed with this merger is that it shuts out access. I think from the lottery piece, I know Dr. McMahon could probably speak more to that because I'm not as familiar with that process, but I know we are taking a look at the lottery process to kind of unpack that and get a better understanding of, you know, who's admitted, how they're admitted, and if they follow the same process that we have with our magnet school process, then I feel like then it's being done with fidelity. But I'm not 100% certain on that, so I can't answer that question. Maybe Matt, you could.
Yeah. So at the moment, the lottery process follows every other charter lottery process, right? So it would go K to 5, and then once they're done matriculating, if they wanted to matriculate at the moment to the middle high, they would have to reapply, right, through the lottery. But I think the request of the merger is, the folks that run the school would like to see some matriculation between the elementary to the middle high. And so that is right, the proposal that will be in front of the board at some point. But at the moment, the current status is the lottery process is just like the other lottery processes outlined with our magnets or our other charter and contract schools.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm happy to, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to yield my
No.
to someone else. I don't want
to. If you have a line of questioning, I prefer you continue it so it says, so that you can get it all out of the way.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
The only other question regarding the operating budget that I had was looking at well, now I've lost my train of thought on the operating budget because I've got capital budget questions. I just wanted to highlight, as a former board member, this was the only point I wanted to make. I absolutely appreciate Dr. Bedell's focus on our lean and mean school system. And we have to work to do some myth busting out in the community and amongst policymakers that there's some sort of great savings by cutting administration. So I appreciate you being frank about that. And then my question is really related to what is your take on the county executive's request to make the compensation package an 8% COLA instead of a 6% COLA and a step.
See, you trying to start some stuff right now. Why would you put me in this position? All right, so you listen. I'm gonna listen, y'all. I give real honest answers. If it's up to me, the 8% benefits everybody more than a 6% and a 2% and then a step. But we also know that we have negotiated agreements, and we know that what has happened, there was some harm that was conducted in this county before I got here, where people weren't getting their proper steps. And it sounds like we finally got those steps aligned. And now, people they tend to look for the opportunity that I'm being rewarded for my longevity and moving up on the step. But personally, yeah, if it's me and I'm talking about wanting to close gaps at a faster rate against our peers, a full-blown 8% is going to close those gaps a lot faster. Remember, we're 20 out of 24 with starting teacher salary. We're 15 out of 24 with average teacher salary. So absolutely 8% is going to close it a lot faster, but that's something that the unions would have to deal with their members, and Yeah, so you all heard my position on it. That's my thought on it.
And I'll just add to, as a reminder, that the blueprint mandates a starting salary of 60,000 for a teacher in fiscal year 27. And so obviously an 8% COLA would get us to that number faster than a step and six. But Dr. Bedell's point, all of that subject to negotiation. We went through a lot of pain to get those steps made up. And so it's a tough situation. But again, I think from the exec's perspective, and that Dr. Bedell alluded to, the 8% hits everybody and would get us to that $60,000 starting salary faster.
And we're still negotiating with the units. So just, for the record, I want to make sure people know that we're still in conversation. So nothing is concrete until things are ratified and approved by the school board.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation. It's an important one to have, not just in negotiations, but here publicly about the challenges we have in our school system. And Dr. Bedell, you can always count on me to start and maybe finish frank conversations. You and I are two peas in a pod. So I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're done, Ms. Pickard, for operating?
Oh, yes, I'll remove my hand. Thank you.
Okay, let's go over here to I think I saw Ms. Ledbetter initially come up first, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Rodney, if that's okay.
I think Ms. Rodvian might have been before me.
Right, yeah, Ms. Rodney.
Tomato. Okay, I wanted to chime in because you went on the conversation of COLA versus straight 8 COLA versus steps. And if I just and this is, my perspective as a longtime teacher in Anne Arundel County, where the COLAs versus steps, initially for that first year, it may not be a problem. But what happened with the law steps is new employees were hired at their correct steps. And then teachers that had been in the system had not been getting steps, ended up, I personally ended up 5 or 6 steps behind people that had the same experience that were coming in from other counties, and they were getting paid $10,000, $15,000 more than, sort of employees who had been in the system. So the first year, I think it could work out fine, but without making up those steps and not being very careful about how new folks coming in, you create inequities that really create a lot of bitterness and and tension that you don't need between colleagues. So anyway, that's my perspective on that. I'll go on to my question. I think, well, I have 2. The first one, I just want to make sure I heard correctly, because I actually have, I don't know, parents get into the weeds very much about, different educational theories and something like the science of reading. But because of a famous podcast that's been out there called Sold on a Story that I'm guessing a lot of you have heard about, the science of reading has been a big topic among parents. And I just wanted to make sure I thought I heard that it wasn't funded in the county executive's budget, but there was ESSER funding that would be able to cover the training that, okay. And I just wanted to make sure that that's there, because I think there is indeed a lot of concern about reading instruction and making sure that we're doing what's, most based on science and data. Okay, and I'm seeing nodding heads, so I will move on to my next question. On the topic of compensation, realizing that it's a state law, the national board certification bumps. This is another area where I think obviously this would have to be done through advocacy or some other method, because you have no control over state law. But especially for more senior teachers who, maybe started teaching before national board certification was a thing, or it was really getting any, getting any compensation. And so they invested, significant funds of their own funds in getting master's degrees and doctorate degrees. And some of them are still paying off that debt and are now seeing that, their $1,500, $2,000 bump, getting, because they have a doctorate degree or a master's degree, is being totally outpaced by a national board certification, which, I personally haven't done, but I I do believe in the value of it, but when you're talking about $10,000 or $17,000 for a national board certification process versus $1,500 or $2,000, that's another area where I think we need to be very careful not to create additional resentment between colleagues. And again, 100% realize that this is state law, but I hope that it's something that that the school system will look at in terms of advocacy to get some kind of parity between different paths to improving your professional skills. So that is all I have for now. Thank you.
Dr. Bedell, or any of did you need to respond to any of that, or any comments? I'm not sure if she needed that, but I just wanted to make sure.
I think I don't know there's anything to respond to. I think it's something we need to consider and process.
Okay. All right. And then I'll go over to Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I have 4 separate questions that are completely unrelated. So no way to transfer back and, transition between them smoothly. The first one I'd just like to start with is specific to the South County and Southern High School cluster, really in particular. The students down there have, unlike a lot of the other students in our other clusters, they're actually getting up earlier. Our high school students are than they were before the school start time. And so I'm just curious if there's any money somewhere in this budget under a line item that I'm not noticing that helps address that transportation, the earlier awake time, those issues that are happening in that cluster.
So Ms. Ledbetter, I would say there's nothing specifically for that, but I would say the hope is, and we can talk a few specifics about the routes in South County. I don't know offhand how many we've had to collapse, right? Because of, for driver shortages or what have you. But the goal is to be fully staffed so we can, reduce those earlier wake up times because there might be a longer distance travel for the bus. So I think if we can get fully staffed, we can uncouple some of those routes we had to collapse to at least give folks some service. But we'd be happy to discuss with you or your office further on the issues you're seeing in South County and to see what we can do. And it might just be a routing issue, right? And so we might be, and obviously, South County's a challenge because of how spread out things are. But we will certainly, I can pledge to you that the transportation team can certainly talk to you about the issues you're seeing and see what we can do to address them.
Let me just chime in on that. The alternative vehicle initiative that we started back in December, we feel like that is beginning to pay huge dividends. It's really serving as a feeder for people who don't have their CDLs. They go through the typical training that any CDL driver would go through while they are working towards being able to get their CDL. But we think that has offered a significant amount of relief for the county. Additionally, I would say based on the last report I looked at, we finally have dropped under 40 vacancies with bus drivers. So to Mr. Stansky's point, we believe that the additional increases, the 10% increase, those are some of the things that we believe will help us to be more fully staffed as we open up school this upcoming year, and hopefully we'll be able to control for some of those variables that you just mentioned, Councilwoman Ledbetter.
Fantastic. And I do want to express my sincere appreciation. I know the transportation team has worked very, very hard to address the challenges, not just in South County, but countywide. I just want to make sure that I recognize all of that hard work and dedication. I know that these are challenges and they're not easy to overcome. Nothing is a snap of a finger, but I appreciate you giving me a very thorough answer to my question. My next question was, this should be easy. It was a clarifier. Where was that? The Enhancing Elementary Excellence, Old Mill Cluster, you mentioned that was the EEE. Was that just the expansion, or was that the EEE program that exists already? I just wanted to make sure I heard properly.
It's a EEE program that exists in the 7 clusters. This would have added an Old Mill cluster, would be the 8th cluster. based on the existing staffing and program model.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to make sure I heard it properly. And then I guess my next question was the steps conversation, the 8% versus the steps just triggered. My understanding is that in the blueprint, at some point, steps are to be eliminated. Is that understanding correct? Do we know what that end date is, if my understanding is correct?
So, great question. So there's nothing legally mandating the end of steps. What the blueprint envisioned is a new compensation structure for teachers called a career ladder, right? And so the ladder essentially has 4 levels. Level 1 is your entry level sort of teaching position. Level 2, to get to level 2 in the law, requires you to begin pursuing national board certification or pursuing a master's degree. Now, where it then really diverges from our current pay structures, and when you get to level 3, which is you only achieve level 3 when you achieve national board certification or a master's degree because there is not a national board certification in your subject area, right? But I will say, other than some international languages, there's pretty much a national board certification for just about every content area. And then after level 3, you know, and also the blueprint envisions level 3 teachers being also on par with an assistant principal, and will require at some point at the end of the decade that any assistant principal, if you want to even go towards the administrative track, you have to have your national board certification. So that will be a new requirement, both for, and then envisions level 3 teachers sort of being on par with an assistant principal. And then where you get to the really sort of your teacher leadership track or your principal track, which is level 4, which also again requires national board certification, but then your teaching time gets reduced and you're doing more mentoring or professional development of teachers in that realm. So now what, you know, how you progress salary-wise within those levels, Ms. Ledbetter, is subject to negotiations.
Okay.
But what I would say, you know, and I feel comfortable saying this because it's written down in reports and I've sat through hundreds of hours of Kerwin Commission meetings, is the goal is to sort of do away with the traditional step and lane structure. Now, whether you remove steps and you call them achievement units or you keep steps within each level, those are all subject to negotiation. But the commission, in exchange for increased revenue and increased compensation for teachers to be on par with other professionals, the expectation was that achievement of national board really drives the compensation enhancement, as well as differentiated pay based on where you teach and possibly even what you teach, which is different from most school districts and how we traditionally compensate folks. Again, all subject to collective bargaining, but the career ladder is mandated to be in place for the 24-25 school year. So we have preliminarily begun those discussions with our bargaining partners, but more to come on that. And I could go on for hours, but I'll stop here and just say what is going to be unique about this is it has to be collectively bargained, but that plan also has to be approved by the Accountability and Implementation Board as being sufficient to meeting the law. And so that's where you could possibly have some conflict in collective bargaining law versus what the Accountability and Implementation Board deems as transformational. And that's really what they're looking to see here. So more to come.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of detail. I really appreciate the thorough answer. And then my last question, again, switching gears completely. For the sake of the public who might be watching at home and who might come back and watch later, I answer questions. The question I'm going to ask you is a question that I get asked a lot, and I would love for folks to have the opportunity to hear it from you rather than from me. I consider you the subject matter experts. If you wouldn't mind just explaining kind of in plain speak, the difference between when I'm looking at under the social emotional category and the positions that are being added, what the difference between a community ambassador, a pupil personnel worker, a school counselor, and a school psychologist versus a school social worker. I think that sometimes is hard for our parents and our community members to understand, and you explaining that a little bit, I think would be very helpful.
That's a lot. So say the positions again.
It was the positions listed under the social emotional category.
Had that in front of me.
And I know it's a big question.
I don't have it in
If
front
I
of me.
didn't receive it all the time, I wouldn't.
Okay.
I can list them one by one if that would be easier.
Yeah, list them one by one, and then I would say to you, the best thing we can do is probably put a description on paper for all 4 of those, and then if we need to post it or if we need to give it, to you all, we can do that. I don't have it all in front of me, so I don't want to. Okay, all right.
Understand. The first one was community ambassador.
All right. So Matt, do you want to talk about the community ambassador? Because I'm not 100% familiar with all of these.
Yeah, so these are folks that live in the community that come to the school. Right now they're temporaries, but they work close to 30 or 40 hours a week, and they can serve as mentors. They can serve as folks that can diffuse really neighborhood situations so they don't bleed into the school. And they're just really there as adults to help support students in any number of, ways. And they can also serve as folks that liaison between nonprofit organizations in the community and the school as well.
So I would even liken them potentially, if you take a look at communities and schools and you look at their model, this is similar, where they kind of serve as potential tentacles to really helping to connect community supports to those families. PPWs, we use those individuals, and I'm familiar with that because we had them in Baltimore County. They, if we have kids who are truant, if we have kids that are experiencing significant issues, they then work directly with those students and those families to try to get to the root cause of what is going wrong, and how do we as a school district work to try to better help support those students. So I think that's pretty the essence of our PPWs. School counselors responsible for scheduling. In some cases too, a lot of our counselors will go into classes and deliver lessons, from time to time. So they're instructional in some aspect. They do counseling related services. They do scheduling. They also, from those counseling related services, will address some of our kids that might have some social and emotional needs that need to be met, but they're also helping students that are in, with their career pathways where they want to go. So there's a lot that those counselors cover, and some schools may, have like college access coordinators or people like that may be able to take some of that off the plate of counselors. But I think that's some of what we do. And then our school psychologists, I think they do a lot of, they do a lot of testing, a lot of diagnosing of our students to figure out how do we best meet the needs of our kids by properly diagnosing if there are disabilities or if there are some concerns that we need to be more targeted. And then school social workers, Matt, you want to talk about that one a little bit more? I don't, because they can be used differently from school districts to school districts.
Yeah, again, and the social workers can provide some of that mental health support. And they do also act as liaisons to other community resources around mental health supports, both for the student and the family as well.
But all of these entities have job descriptions that are very explicit on what their roles are. And like I said, we can provide that information as needed.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the answers and your time.
I will now go to Ms. Hummer. On you.
Mr. Smith, Ms. Tobin had her hand raised. I think she wanted to add something on what was commented before, if you wanted to call on her before me. Dr. Tobin.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ms. Hummer. Super quick. I just wanted to add, you saw a lot of detail from Mr. Stansky, and to follow up to the earlier comment about the relative leanness of our staff. Mr. Stansky obviously right now is filling 2 positions. He's the acting chief operating officer while still handling all of his chief financial duties. But I think you're probably aware, many of you, he's considered and was recently received an award, but one of the leaders in the state in his knowledge of what it's taking to implement the blueprint for Maryland's future. And I just want everyone to fully appreciate the work that he's done, the expertise that he has, and that we have someone like that in a staff that, while it looks like a big staff when you walk into that building on Riva Road, is in fact a relatively very lean staff. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Stansky, give a shout out for his work, and just highlight that to our council members. So thank you, Ms. Hummer. I appreciate it.
So, well, and I will just echo but first off, echo the kudos to Matt Stansky, because he's amazing and is really a resource for the entire state to have on there. But also, I do appreciate, Dr. Bedell, you bringing out how lean our non-instructional, our non-school-based staff is. During my time on the school board and since, we've done a number of studies that have shown that the outside groups have actually said we need to add more people because we don't have enough people to handle there. So the school staff that keeps everything running does an amazing job on a lean spreadsheet down there. So I will echo that of how we need more staff everywhere, but this school system has always prioritized putting staff before students.
Yep.
To make sure that they were staff that is the top priority, is the ones who are working directly with students. And so those behind the scenes have taken on more duties to make sure that personnel can be there for the kids. I touch on a couple of things that people said just to echo. In the STEP versus the COLA situation, we just heard a briefing from the community college, and they have revamped their system in the past couple of years to do away. They as well had the traditional educational model of a STEP and plus merit, and they have done away with that and created a different, more market-based thing that doesn't relate entirely to school-based, but it is something interesting to pursue. And so I just suggest that for the school system and for the bargaining units to take a look at as perhaps an alternative to the traditional STEP system. Ms. Pickard brought up Chesapeake Science Point, and as a parent who had 2 children who attended charter or contract schools, I think it's exciting that we're opening another alternative for the elementary school, but I would echo that I have real concerns about the equity if that were to be linked in a guaranteed attendance from kindergarten on up, because it really limits our families who are looking for alternatives or different settings for their kids or who move in. And so I would express my desire that those be kept independent so that we equitably can offer those opportunities to more kids throughout the county and not make it a closed system in there. So I did notice, I have to say this out loud to my special education friends. As a former special education teacher, I know the huge need that we have for more special education teachers and staff, and that we're not reaching there. However, I also know that those positions are classically and currently very difficult to fill. And while I know that we would all like to see more special education positions in the school system, I support the county executive's decision not to fund any of those positions right now when we have so many outstanding vacancies in special education. So when we can fill those, to expand it more. But I'm very excited to see the bonus in there for special education staff. And I hope that will help us to recruit, to bring in more people to fill those positions, but also retention for our hardworking staff who's there. The buses, I'm going to echo that, you know, please, I've said it again, that, you know, I'm excited to hear that we're filling those things, but the overcrowding on the buses, I've shared with Dr. Bedell and Dr. Tobin. My children have not ridden their assigned bus all year because it's too full. And the bus does not stop at their stop because it's already full by the time it gets there. And I know we're not alone on that. And so I look forward to, I hope that this coming year that we will be able to address some of that overcrowding because that's safer for our students as well if the buses aren't overcrowded.
Councilwoman Homer, if I can just add to that. We just completed our interviews for our chief operating officer, and we know that this is one of the hot topics that this individual will have to deal with. I think I also agree. I've said some things to our school board about potentially some of the data in the prismatic study, you know, that there's some things that we might need to look at differently because maybe we have over collapsed. And that has created overcrowding. So these are things that we will continue to work on. I just want you to know that, like, that's on our radar. I was over at Meade. I did the listening and learning tour. And then when I met with the small group principals, they gave me documentation around, even if we were fully staffed, we still have overcrowding. So just know that it's on my radar. It's already been brought back to our team and will be something that we will be working on when we hire our new COO here and to start here soon.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that the assistant principals that are currently funded, part of the plan is to add those to our special schools. I think that's crucial. We've been trying for years to chip away at that lack of assistant principals. I really don't know how principals do their jobs without an assistant principal there. Well, we know how they do their jobs. They unfortunately have to pull other crucial staff away from their jobs to help fill things in. And so I'm glad that we are, but we still have a long ways to go, and that should not be taking as long as it should be. And I will do everything I can to help to reduce that, to reduce that number of vacancies there. And then one other question, and this is probably for you, Mr. Stansky, as our blueprint guru, the career counseling. So I had looked at that, and my first thought when I saw that the requirements was that it would be that we could use that blueprint requirement to increase our school staff counseling staff. But from how y'all described it, this is going to be career counseling that will be done outside of the school system, not within our own staff.
Well, the money is being sent to the Workforce Development Board, who will then employ folks to come into our school system to do the career counseling. So it's really just, putting the dollars in the hands of the experts in careers, right? And working with us through an MOU to determine how to best provide those services to our students, be it within the school day, before school, after school, opportunities for, field trips to go see careers. So a whole litany of things.
Okay. Well, and I am glad to hear that it's not another thing being put on the plate of our school counselors who are already spread very thin. But a part of me hoped it could be used to add more school counselors. But it's as long as the resources are coming into the kids. So, all right, that's it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Ms. Fiedler, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I first want to acknowledge Dr. Tobin. I apologize. I did not say hello in my first question. So hello, how are you doing? Thanks for being here this morning. My question is actually a piggyback onto a question that Councilwoman Rodvian asked. I did watch the podcast Sold a Story. So my question is the funding for training what is the intent of that training? Is it just kind of review phonics, or what's the details there?
So it is actually, so twofold. We have funding for a consultant to come in to review our curriculum, right? And then we're going to ultimately select new curriculum based on the science of reading, best practices. And then the major funding in ESSER 3 is to bring all of our elementary personnel, not just teachers, but teaching assistants and administrators in during the summer to actually provide that training. So it's for our Unit 1 personnel, we'll have to pay them stipends to come in outside of their duty year to actually receive that training. But the first is sort of review and evaluate the curricular components, select new curriculum, and then obviously then train off of that.
Okay, so then would the intent be to have that new curriculum in place for the 23-24 school year?
24-25 school year.
Yeah, it would, yeah, there's no way you can do it. I mean, I think we're talking about potentially 90 hours of training. It's really extensive.
Okay.
And I think all of this will roll out with the new strategic plan. So we know we're building a strategic plan over the next 8 months or so. And in that strategic plan, there will be a commitment to, you know, some of the pedagogical shifts that need to take place. One of them being science for reading, you know, another one being that we really want to move towards becoming a market value asset school district. And that's a whole nother conversation around career readiness. But all of these things are aligned with the direction that we feel the state is going in, but also what research is telling us that we should be doing to expose our kids in order for them to be, you know, literate and ready to access grade level standards at a rigorous level when they finish up, when they enter into the 3rd grade. So we also we have 2 finalists for our chief academic officer position. That individual will be the person that will kind of lead us through this implementation of science for reading. And I'm really pleased to say to you all, we have 2 finalists. They just get it. They understand this stuff and they can speak this language in multiple languages around their understanding of science for reading. So we're building a team here. I like to tell people we're building a squad. We're going to be a force to be reckoned with here in this school district with the talent that we're bringing on.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. I appreciate that information.
Okay, I think you all see no more hands. We're going to transition to the Capitol side of the house.
Awesome. Did want to take a second to introduce Melissa Camilla, who has helped tremendously in putting the operating budget together. So thank her. And joining me on the Capitol side is Director of Facilities, Kyle Roof. He'll be available to help answer any questions. So we'll walk through the capital budget. If we could put the exhibit up. This is a format that you should all be familiar with. The old red, white, and blue exhibit, and happy to report we see a lot of white and blue here. And similar to last year, we have a very robust funded capital budget. Just so for the council's awareness, the IAC plans to vote next week, May 11th, on the 100% allocations. And if all goes well, we will receive 100% of our state funding requests. So that is, we haven't gotten that in a while. And so that is really, really good news. So just briefly walk through, since you've seen a lot of this a few times throughout the year. The county executive is fully funding our health and safety request of $1.2 million for fiscal year 24. Next on the list, security related upgrades. We did see a reduction from the $2 million request to 1.25, but we feel okay about this. We still have some remaining funds left in the account. So when you add those remaining funds to the 1.25, we'll be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish in this line item for the 23-24 school year. Full funding of building systems renovations at $35.5 million. We actually got increased from our request of $7 million for the maintenance backlog to $7.8 million, and that is due to $876,000 grant we're receiving from the state to convert more schools that are currently on fuel oil over to natural gas. Roof replacement was fully funded at $3 million. Relocatable classrooms, we did see a reduction there of 600,000, but again, we feel with the funding we have in that line item, we'll be able to manage our requests for next school year. Full funding for asbestos abatement and barrier-free access. School bus replacement, we did request $2 million. We're coming in at 800,000. Again, based on our replacement schedule, we feel like this would we will be able to maintain what we need to. I just will give the council a heads up that this line item will, we're going to take a critical eye at this one as we transition. The state is mandating that we transition over to electric buses beginning January 1 of 2025. So we're having discussions internally about how to best finance something like that, either through the capital budget or through leasing in the operating budget. So more to come on this line item. All right, line items 11 through 16, additions, the West County Elementary construction, Old Mill Middle South construction, Cat North construction, Old Mill Middle School North design and construction, Old Mill High School design and construction, and the health remodifications were all fully funded in the county executive's recommended budget. School furniture, we did see a reduction of $300,000. This is the line item we used to replace aging furniture in our buildings. 800,000 to upgrade various schools was fully funded. We did see a small reduction in our vehicle replacement from 500 to 400,000. Full funding of aging schools and playground improvements. We did see an increase in overall funding on the athletic stadiums. We did receive 2 bond bill authorizations. One is $2.2 million for a second turf field at Southern High School, and the other is $200,000 for a new field house at Chesapeake High School. So excited that our colleagues in the General Assembly were able to secure funding for us in that as well. And then last is our driveway and parking lot improvements. The board asked for $1 million and the county executive funded 500,000. So all in, the board had asked for 197 million. The county executive, in partnership with the state, was able to secure us in the proposal $196.3 million. So again, just a remarkable capital budget for us to partner to go along with the operating budget. So with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions the council may have.
All right, I see. I'm going to go to Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm obviously super excited to see the school construction fully funded. It means the world to the Old Mill and Glen Burnie communities. I wanted to take a minute to talk about a couple things in the more general sense related to our capital improvement budget. Back in 2005, this county took a tremendous step forward in working collaboratively with the county government and the school system to do the facilities study with the MGT group. We did it 10 years later. That time is coming up again. And I just want to make it known to county governments, those watching at home, and the school system that I would love to see us tee that up again and be prepared to engage a third-party consultant to truly review where our capital dollars are most needed going into the next decade. And I'd like to, one of the things that happened in the 2015 study, the current county executive at that time put his thumb on that study and included the Crofton High School construction in the review and analysis. I'd like us to consider adding a component to the MGT traditional study, looking at school utilization numbers and where growth is happening in the county. So there's really it's not really a question. It's more, it was a really bold step back in 2005 to truly take politics out of school construction in our capital budget. It's worked really well for us. And going forward, I think we need to continue it. And I want to make sure this council and everyone here knows that that's on the horizon. It's budgets. These budgets, you're going to start working on the next year's budget in a few months. So I think we should see a line item both in the county side and the AACPS side for the next study.
Yeah, I'll just say, Ms. Pickard, Mr. Roof and I have just spoken internally about a timeline. And so obviously we share that with the board and welcome a similar structure to what we had in the past as a partnership to look at where our needs are the next decade. And we also specifically talked about that study also needs to include a comprehensive look at pre-kindergarten and where students are and where they're going to be needed to go, because that's going to be the new pressure on our facilities, is that rapid expansion of that program, especially if we can't get some of our private providers on board to help serve some of our children. So yeah, completely concur and look forward to working with all of you on that endeavor.
And I know we have to go through the whole RFP process and all of that stuff, but I will tell you, MGT is highly regarded. I know we used them in Kansas City and was using that data as we were going through Blueprint 2030 before I left, and found the data to be, very valid and reliable. So I agree with you on your sentiments with the work that they did in the past.
Well, I appreciate. I'm just happy to tee up this conversation, especially for my colleagues who are new to this conversation. If I'll just run through all of my quick questions. I am extremely grateful for the school construction that's happening in the Old Mill cluster. It is amazing. I will say we have some lessons learned with the current middle school that is being constructed at Southgate Park in regards to community, the community engagement in the, I had a lot of neighbors that maybe don't have kids in school that came home from vacation and their backyard was cleared and what was a park was now getting a middle school. So I'd love to talk about how we communicate when schools are with the surrounding community. We don't, the county and school system don't have to comply with what the private developers do with 300 feet letters going out to people, but it might be useful in the future. Dr. Bedell and I had this conversation, and just for the sake of my community, I couldn't let this conversation go without bringing that up. It's always challenging. It's always challenging to start the communication, but I think Dr. Bedell and I know you think, communication and transparency is key. So just something to consider as we continue a lot of construction in District 2 over the next 5-6 years. The other, that was my one question, and I'm going to let my other colleagues speak now. And then if I remember my third question, I'll come back to it.
All right, I'm going to go to Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So capital budget number 2, item number 2, the security related upgrades. With what is already left in the pot, if you will, and the investment from the county executive, will this fully retrofit double vestibules in every school in the county?
Go ahead, Kyle.
So we currently have 97 vestibules completed throughout the county at all of our schools. We have 25 that are in progress in some form, whether that be design or construction. We believe that the funding that's presented in the county executive's budget, along with a pending security vestibule grant that will be offered in FY24, hopefully being presented to you all in October as a supplemental, will help finish out those projects for us.
So all schools will be complete?
The remaining schools that are still outstanding are satellite schools, more like Studio 39, some of the other buildings like that, and those would be the next round that we would hit up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you. I have a specific question and a more general question. Under the security line item, you mentioned that you feel like you have the funds internally to cover what needs to be covered for that difference in what you requested versus what the county executive's budget submitted. Just out of curiosity, if you didn't have those resources internally, how that may have impacted, if there were any specific things that shortfall, that difference, how that might have affected or impact your ability, to fulfill your mission around school security.
And it would have delayed the finishing of the vestibule, right, Kyle? I mean, that would.
Correct. But there's always going to be a need for additional security upgrades throughout the schools. So any additional funding that's available, we'd be happy to put into that account. Our next item that we're going to try to resolve or continue to add to is access controls throughout the building and upgrading those.
Do you mind explaining what access controls are?
It would be more like key fob access, being able to turn on and off when people are able to get into the buildings.
Thank you. Sorry, just taking quick notes. My next question is more specific, particularly under the line item for athletic stadium improvements. I noticed that one of the items listed, it mentions lighting, and I'm just curious on behalf of the many folks that I've heard from, whether or not that lighting includes baseball and softball lighting at the southern fields.
We were fortunate enough with some of our fourth quarter funds to be able to help spearhead that project right now. So we're working on that as we speak.
Wonderful. That is amazing. Thank you.
We will put that overage money to good work. I promise you.
Thank you very much.
Is that it, Ms. Ledbetter? Okay, Ms. Hummer.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. Every year we have money in there for the relocatables. And it's always the goal to try to do away with relocatables if we can. Does the funds in there, does that include removing some of the ones at schools where they're no longer needed?
We do that in a combination of two different ways. One, if there's a major capital project, they get removed in that project. So Rippling Woods, Hillsmere, Quarterfield Elementary School all have some portables that will be taken offline once the school starts demolition. Other schools, we use the relocatable fund program to move relocatables from one school to another. If we find that those particular relocatables are not able to be moved due to condition, then we will use that money to demo them.
Also, it still amazes me that we've got schools that are on fuel oil. How many schools is that we still have using fuel oil?
We have approximately 30 schools that use fuel oil.
That's a lot. So it shows how old some of our buildings are, I think. I want to echo what Ms. Pickard said about the MGT study. I really do believe that the MGT, that the consultant group and the collaboration between county and school system for that is one of the best things that our county has done in the past 25 years, to really work collaboratively to make school construction as much as possible about the true needs of schools and students rather than a political football to go around of who can bring out the most people to get a school done. And the county and the school system has really followed that list very well over the past almost 20 years. And so I look forward to us doing it again. I hope to see, as I said, I think we'll all be working together on this, but guidelines going, criteria that we'd like, whatever consulting group we choose moving forward. I think our middle schools really need some attention. They were not included. There were no middle schools that were included on the priority list in the first two MGTs, and many of them need some TLC at this point. And I also, I think the timing will work well with the redistricting that's about to take place, so that we'll really have a good sense of school capacity and where it needs to be. and that we can focus, perhaps not have to do some construction that we thought we had to, because we're able to better utilize the space that we have. But I would like to see, I'm not sure how we do this, to include some sort of equity formula in there to make sure that that our schools that are in some of our needier areas are prioritized, that those kids have the most up-to-date schooling to help them with what they have. We have some very old buildings still. We've done amazing work over the past 20 years, and some schools that were all over the county that were in poor condition are now jewels, but we still have a few. I'm looking at you, Glen Burnie High School and Annapolis High School and Arundel High School and Southern High School and all of our middle schools. We still have some that still need a lot of love. And so I look forward to us all working together on that to move forward for the vision for the next 20 years for school construction.
Councilwoman Hummer, two things you said that I have to comment on. One, data. You talked about really trying to remove any subjectivity out of the process around what schools get what. And that is, why I do appreciate that we stay current with best practices from a evaluation standpoint of having an outside entity come in and kind of help us have a further understanding of where our needs are. So that actually protects us and it eliminates any unnecessary scrutiny. So that's one that I definitely agree with. And then you talked about, you said something about middle schools. And I know when I go and do school visits, and trust me, I go and do unannounced visits. So some of these schools I'm going in for the first time. But if I see a facility that I feel like, man, this is really bad, I'll use Northeast Middle School. It's just a dark, it's just not an inviting environment, right? The lighting is just not conducive to what I think a school should look like. So I immediately went back to our team and said, hey, this is something that we need to take a look at. And I think that piece is important. And then I felt like I had a third thing that I wanted to come in on, and I just flat out forgot it. But I do agree with you just from the aspect of, us having to make sure that we properly balance the system. And, everybody says we need to redistrict until their community is the one being touched. And I'm saying that to all of you all as elected officials. If we're going to do this right, we have to do it right. And we cannot retreat if we truly want to balance this system out, because we have a good problem. I'd rather be balancing out a school system because there is interest with people wanting their kids in our system than to have to balance it out because we're closing schools because we're losing enrollment.
Okay, I'm going to go to Ms. Fiedler. I'll just see you up there briefly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Smith. I want to go back to not item number 2, not to ask a question, but to ask for information. Would you all be able to share through Madam Auditor what your outlook is, what your goals are for security upgrades, the costs, and reasonable time frame to accomplish each of those? I'd be interested to see that. And then I want to jump down to item number 9, the school bus replacement. I don't believe that House Bill 492 impacts this budget. That is the extension of bus life within Anne Arundel County's public schools. So my question is, of the item number 9, how many of those are buses that are still on the shorter lifespan, if you will?
I'll get that back to you in writing. I don't know that offhand. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Ms. Pickard.
Thank you. I really appreciate this dialogue today. It's really quite productive. But I did want to ask about how we have over the decades co-located rec and park assets and school system assets. And I don't really have a question. I have more of a request that we collaborate in a more effective way, as we have built regulation gyms at schools, and maybe our youth sports organizations are are still struggling to get access to those gyms. So it's really more putting it out there saying, hey, can we take a look at how we're co-locating rec and parks and school system assets from fields on BOE property and gyms on BOE property that, and maybe try to build a better relationship with rec and parks, the user groups, the school system, and the principals in those buildings, and tighten up some better communication. It's really not a question. Just wanted to put it out there.
I do want to respond though and say that I do know that Ms. Lays and I and Kyle or Mr. Roof meet regularly to talk through these issues. And yes, hear you, and we'll continue to talk through these great fields that we manage and build are in very high demand, understood, and but want to make sure that all, you know, that anybody who has access or a need to it is not, you know, that if they go through the proper channels of rec and parks, that you know, they get access to it. So
I appreciate that.
Work through those relationships.
Thank you.
All right. For me, the capital project sheet that you had up previously, there were a list. I don't know if you could share that briefly, Madam Secretary. Was the one presentation. Yep. So since and this is just a request, you don't have, this isn't necessarily answer here. If it's possible to send to me 2015, from 2015 on forward, this sheet, I know every year, every budget year, you guys produce this. So I know we have it for 2015. I know we have it for 2016. But if you can send those to me, that's the one request. Just because there's a method to the madness. So that's the one request. And then the other, generally a comment, and you can close the slide deck, the presentation. I don't need to. Is for Dr. Bedell, and appreciate the conversation. This isn't for this fiscal year, obviously, but I do appreciate the fact that we spoke about middle school athletics in the future, and it's certainly something, at least for 25, fiscal year 25 or 26 going forward, that we chart our course towards. And so just wanted to put that on the record as, you know, not necessarily, not for this fiscal year, but for the future, we kind of align ourselves to be able to produce that. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think we are definitely aligned on that one. And as I've shared with you 2 days ago or so, you know, I'm working with our athletic director around the possibility of middle school sports. And I think we'll be prepared to present something at a public board meeting around some of the visioning that we have in that space. And if I could, I just wanted to go back to, I remember what I wanted to say to Julie Hummer's question around some of the schools that might need more because of aging aspects of the facility. One of the things I would want to introduce at some point is called like an impact funding model, where we are able to look at some capital money that could be distributed to schools, where schools, they may be small projects, where school may be able to work with their community to address some of the smaller things that our bigger scope of plans can't address, but really bringing the community in on that model. And that's something that, you know, we'll have to talk about that with the team. You know, but I think there are some ways that we can look at doing some things to also let our community know that, hey, we recognize that there are some smaller projects that don't require the significant hundreds of millions of dollars that we could work together on. So that was the other thing I wanted to bring up in response to that piece.
Okay. Any other questions from any other council members? All right, seeing no hands, Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, this has been awesome. I'm excited about the school system. It's obviously half of our budget, so it has to be the most important thing that we focus on as a body. And so I'm elated to show my support for the school system's budget, and we'll go from there. Madam Vice Chair, did you want any closing comments?
No, I appreciate everybody's time and look forward to working with everybody in the future. I think I've said enough. Thanks.
I just
Okay,
wanted
well-
to chime in and share my thanks as well.
And
Any,
thank you.
There you
Thank
go. Any other council members? Any remarks? Okay, is there any other business to be brought before this county council? I see no hands. I think we're all looking at that 12 o'clock lunch, maybe that was just me. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Allison Pickard.
Rodney in second.
Robbie in second. Any opposed? I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. The county council is adjourned until Monday, May 8th, 2023 at 9 a.m. when we will again meet virtually for more FY24 budget presentations. On the county council website, there is a dedicated FY24 page. Here you will find information on meetings as well as how to testify or comment on the proposed FY24 budget for Anne Arundel County. That being said, enjoy the rest of your day.